Hello, welcome back to the Ineffable Else. I know it's been a long time. This has been the longest hiatus I've ever had from this YouTube channel, and with good reason. I was travelling with Ricardo for 2 months. That was part of June, all of July and a few weeks in August, and now it's October and I'm finally ready to talk about it. This has been because I have needed time to process the experience and also just to come down from it, and also facing the daunting task of going through all of the footage to organise that into some kind of coherent video series has seemed too big of a task. And now I'm ready. Now I feel like it's settled in me and I'm ready to talk about it. I'd like to make an initial video in which I just talk about why we went there, because that has sometimes been a question that I've received, certainly from my students here in Spain and Indian people in India and online. Why did you choose to go there? Why did you want to go to India? What was the attraction? So the short answer is I've always wanted to go there. It's always been, if you were to ask me of a handful of countries that I'd like to visit around the world, where would it be? I'd say India. It's just had a big impact on my life and on many people's lives in terms of what it's produced, and also given how important it is in this world. The month before we went there, it earned the title of having the largest population on Earth, more than China. It's actually got a larger population than China on a smaller landmass. So it's very, very densely populated. Another fundamental thing about India is that I grew up around Indians. Probably, I don't know, 30% of my friend group were always of Indian descent, either second or third generation. And I spent a lot of time around Indian families and culture, and it's hard to avoid in Britain anyway, especially in London. There's a huge fusion of cultures there, and I felt myself to have a big affinity with Indian culture, Indian people. I really love the emphasis on family, and I loved the openness to something beyond the physical, beyond the mundane world, something more transcendental and beyond. Not that I particularly saw it that way as a teenager, but certainly as I got older I was feeling that a lot more. I love the love of beauty, I love the Venusian qualities, the emphasis on making your space very beautiful, making it smell beautiful, making it feel like a wonderful place to be, with lots of texture and colour. And as I got older, my interests developed into meditation and yoga and spirituality, and I was in groups where we were singing mantras, and the majority of the mantras were in Sanskrit, so I was connecting with it in that very secondary Western hippie style. So it was all around me. I felt like I was completely immersed in it, and on top of that I was surrounded by people who had been there, so that really added to my interest in terms of going there. It made it seem like more of a possibility, and it made me feel like, okay, there's a footing I can have when I arrive there. It's going to be like a welcoming place. It felt like there may be many similarities in our lifestyles as well, and Ricardo had the same feelings pretty much. We didn't have very many expectations. We went there with a very open heart and mind. There were, of course, specific people and inspirational Indians that we've spent a lot of time with. It's strange to say that because many of them are dead, but you end up spending a lot of time with them, whether that's in spirit or just their essence, you know, when you're listening to them or you're reading their books. And number one on our list has got to be Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti. Just an incredible character whose essence is something beyond culture, beyond where he comes from or what he's been exposed to. But of course he was very fascinating, putting all of his incredible teachings aside, just him as a character, as being a sort of a chosen one, selected by the Theosophy Society to be their new messiah, to be their guru, because they saw something in him. And then him being Indian, but then raised in London and having a British education and having that big fusion. As I say, it's the fusion that really gets me between India, the East, and the West, and that has had a good couple of 100 years of that kind of combining of heart and mind. Krishnamurti, in a biography written about him and in any of his talks, he's always emphasizing the quality that he has that makes him so present is a vacancy, a vacant mind, completely empty of concepts, without any kind of fixed idea about anything, just very clear and very able to discern.
Forgive me, Doctor, if I'm blundering into where the angels fear to tread. Okay. I come to you with my problem. Yeah. I cannot get on with somebody, or I'm terribly depressed, or something dishonest in me. I come to you. You are concerned to tell me, become more honest. But not find out what is real honesty. I'm dishonest.
Yes.
You inquire why I'm dishonest.
Yes.
Go penetrate into, disturb me. Don't pacify me.
Yeah.
Don't help me to say, but be a little more honest and a little more this or that. But shake me so that I find out what is real honesty is.
So, of course, we're extremely attracted to his way of being and his teachings, the way he demonstrates through listening to these long discussions he has with different scientists and spiritual leaders and children and anyone who's there. He will, or even just in a dialogue almost with himself, he'll never refer to himself as me or I, he will say the speaker. He just sees himself as a speaker, as an altavoz, as something that is there to share what we all observe. So he will say, let's go on a journey together and investigate.
We are exploring together. We are sharing our explorations together. Because there is no authority. Though the speaker sits on a platform because it's convenient, people can see, the platform doesn't give him any authority.
So he will take us very, very concisely sticking to one thought or one concept and just take it to its conclusion to try and pull it apart. And so far most things can be pulled apart as far as I've seen. It's of course the knowledge that the only real consistent thing is love, is something like that, but he doesn't get swept up in these romantic terms. It was Ricardo that sort of turned me onto him, because he follows the same process of self-inquiry, of analysing your thoughts and pulling them apart and sitting with something and just allowing yourself to be free of any concepts. For me, he's the ultimate scientist. He's just so focused, so attentive to the moment, and so wary. He doesn't even need to be wary, because he was so adept at not letting anything stick to him. So even being told he was the Messiah, he pulled that apart and he disseminated, well, what the hell does that mean, and where would I fit within that, and you're just putting me on a pedestal so you don't do the work yourself. And he took it upon himself to, as the head of the Theosophy Society, I am now disbanding this group. So he gave up all of the wealth and status and fortune that came with that position. It was started by many wealthy Victorians, and he broke it down, and he wanted nothing to do with being a figurehead or something to do with stardom or a messiah. And he would encourage people to just question everything, just go into it, let's go into this, let's go into this. And many people find his work very dense, and while I've watched him over the years, Richie's shown me it's not him who's dense, it's us with our big heavy dense minds full of stuff that makes it very difficult to be direct and go directly to the truth. And this is the only way that we want to live our life, is finding the truth, because what a waste of time to live outside of that. And I couldn't be more grateful to this man, and it is just such a beautiful being. He's so funny and he's so generous and cutting, and it's just everything you could want in a teacher. And his teachings, they transcend time. He died in the 80s, and you still listen to his work now and read his books now, and they have the same resonance because the human mind is the same. It doesn't change, and it won't change as long as we use it in that way. And he's really adamant that it's a tool that we can pick up, and you'd see him almost picking up his own mind to use it, like, let's use this tool. And when he doesn't need to use it, he'll drop it, and he'll be happily just enjoying being alive, just being there, being present. And he was very willing to criticize culture and to criticize the cultures of different places, and he didn't particularly identify with anything.
So education at its lowest step, there's violence hidden. It may explode at any time, and you don't seem to care. And you build temples, go to the temples, take vows, you follow. Professionally, you're a lawyer or an engineer, and go to a temple with all the superstitions. You follow the contradiction. For God's sake, realize what's happening.
And that's where we like to stand. So we go with him always in the back of our mind and our hearts whenever we go anywhere. But it's particularly interesting to see the culture in which he was born into, and how that could either be a hindrance or a blessing in finding the path that he went on, which was an utterly extraordinary, fateful, possibly lucky, intense life journey. Yeah, other notable characters, of course, is Paramahansa Yoganada, and reading his book, which many people do, which turns them on to India and wanting to go there and wanting to just be in this soup of India, is the autobiography of a yogi. I just found that book so inspiring and so devoid of hate and judgment, and so like painfully loving for the average person who isn't exposed to that much love, to really have their heart opened up by that book and the stories within it, and the way he has this lens on life that is just so life-affirming and beautiful. Also, a lot of his places that he mentioned in his book are places that we wanted to visit, including Varanasi. Beautiful chapters describing India, and this is India of the 1920s. For me, I feel like it was the India of before the 1970s, before any kind of industrialization, and before the invention of plastic. And that was probably the largest contrast we felt between the India he described and the India that we experienced, with the sheer population they have now, and with all of the pollution of this particular kind that never breaks down. That changes things greatly. I'll go into that in another video. Of course, I could mention so many, but Ramana Maharshi and his simplicity and presence and care and attention and devotion to animals and love of animals. We're obsessed with animals, we love them. And there's not much to say about him, you just have to see a picture of Ramana Maharshi and connect, and you'll probably start crying. And yeah, just souls with incredible minds, incredible desire for peace, incredible understanding of peace and harmony. And yeah, it's mind-boggling how many of them came out of India. That's the thing that really kind of stuck with us, and we've wanted to try and align ourselves as much as possible with having a very spiritually inclined life and grounding that into a daily reality. And there was always a feeling, especially for Richie, that would be more possible in India because of the climate being quite conducive to meditation. You're not likely to freeze to death there in most areas, and People are very kind to sadhus and very understanding of people who are taking a spiritual path, and you read books about the Buddha and renouncing wealth. There's just a different perspective on it, rooted in an individual path that you can take, and there are many forms, and that non-duality that's there in Hinduism and in deeper, more mystical areas of spirituality, there is no one way, and there are many ways, and people are very open to experimenting, and that was a wonderful aspect of India that attracted us there. Of course, part of that is yoga. Richie's been doing yoga for years, decades, and he gave me a crash course while we were in Madrid. We were going to 2 classes per day, apart from Sundays. And then we had one day where we just did 1 class. So it was very intensive, yoga all day, every day, and it killed my mind. It was very profoundly insightful to just be with my body, and my mind was on my body the whole time, and in the body, and feeling, and listening to this repetitive Spanish new language for me, and just hearing that. It was very, very purifying. And he also signed us up for a gym membership, so we went and got a sauna every day. We weren't working out, we were just going to the gym to use their sauna and sweating out toxins, and we were fasting, and we were eating extremely healthy probiotic foods all the time. It was opening me up in so many ways. And vegetarianism, another thing that attracts us to India, is the lack of meat. I've never felt comfortable eating meat. It's not been on my plate for 7 years now, and I don't miss it. And sometimes in Spain it can be a bit tiring, because they're a big meat-eating place, and we knew that we wouldn't have problems in that sense. But I have a whole other video planned talking about our diet while we were there as well. Another thing, Vipassana, rooted in the original true Buddhist meditation. Before all the Buddhists were basically run out or killed off in India, the original teachings of the Buddha were held onto in Bhutan, and this is Vipassana meditation. When it's done as an intensive retreat, as I did, it's 10 days of silent meditation. So 10 days of every day meditating from 4 o'clock in the morning until 7, having some tea, meditating again until 11, having some lunch, meditating until 5, having some dinner, and then going back to listen to the teachings of Vipassana. So I may have got the timetable wrong, but I do remember we were getting up at 4, and that was hugely powerful. And again, the descriptions of India and the feeling of how these ashrams just are a normal part of life in India was very appealing. A few more people who I really liked the merging of course, listening to Ram Dass talking about his experience meeting his guru in India, and Robert Adams, who was a follower of Ramana Maharshi. He actually initially went to Yoganada, who said, "No, I'm not your guru, go to Ramana Maharshi." And just seeing his very blunt and direct, kind of cool way of teaching, and just relaying the truth and using logic to kind of smack you around the face. How could I forget Nisargadatta Maharaj? Just wonderful, incredible teacher, who was also a tobacco salesman who would sit there chain smoking, and just was incredibly good at finding the false and seeing the truth. And it really doesn't matter what on earth you're doing with your life, as long as you're not in denial and you're not living in some kind of false reality. Maya is of course the concept that comes from Hinduism and from Indian philosophy, that everything is Maya. I actually have a mosquito net behind, and I can see through just about, but there's a black net in front, and that's the Maya. That's the thing that makes everything appear like it is actually a flip-flop, when it's just lots of moving particles coming together and forming a seemingly solid object. So already having that idea of Maya and understanding that everything is there, everything is deception, really. Everything that you see with and touch with and smell with your senses is all an illusion. And what better place to learn that than in the country with the largest population in the world? And as we came to find out, a particularly invasive culture with no real understanding of personal space. I think sometimes it's very nice for me living on my land with my caravan and my cat, and it's just not particularly challenging. So to go to a place that was not really a holiday destination but more of a challenge, and it was, but always knowing that there's, okay, everything is Maya and all perception is fleeting and deceiving in a way, but there is something deeper than that which is consistent, which is held up and demonstrated by all of those gurus that I mentioned. None of them particularly see themselves as a guru either. They're just holding that space beneath, that continuous drone, that infinite Om space underneath, underlying everything, which means all of the happenings on top, they're not really going to affect you or the wider scale of things. It's the idea of needing yin and yang, and it's not so much needing it, it's just it's always going to be there, flying back and forth, and there's something beneath that which is much deeper and much more harmonious and less warring, less dualistic. We're very interested in non-duality. Of course, I also am very aware that it's an incredibly popular destination within the spiritual community of which I'm part, which is why when a lot of my students and a lot of family friends and people here were asking me why, I just thought, well, of course, why would I not? This is the most obvious destination. It's on all of the bucket lists of all of my rainbow family friends. And I kind of wanted to analyze that as well. I wanted to see, because I often see how much in every walk of life people are living in denial and hiding things and sugarcoating things and painting things to be just one way. And I'd heard many things. Of course, I'd heard people say it's extremely beautiful, but it's also challenging. Some people gave very fair depictions, but sometimes people were a bit too sort of, oh, it's all love and light there, it's all magical, it's all the best, most wonderful experience. And I wanted to observe Westerners there, and I wanted to observe how I would be treated. I wanted to see the change now that it's 2023, a long time, and what technology is doing there. In some areas I'd always thought of it as being extremely non-materialistic. I wanted to see if that still rang true in any way, and how the beliefs have been shifted by this incredibly new sort of Aquarian age that we're living in now. I also wanted to explore Indian astrology and to see what it's like in terms of the tropical climate and the fruit. Certain chapters in the autobiography of a yogi, he talks about eating mangoes from a mango tree. And I was in Panama a few years ago, and I was faced with a massive mango tree in this backyard of this guy we were staying with, and he said to me and my friends, go for it, eat them all. And they were dropping, and for some reason I didn't eat a single one. I wasn't a mango fanatic, I was just opening up to fruit. And I remember my friends there, they were gorging themselves on all of these mangoes, and I don't even think I tried one. And that's like one of those regrets in my life that I've had sitting with me since then. It's just like a general distrust of fruit, which kind of comes from living in a place where the fruit is generally not that tasty, it's not very fresh, it's normally frozen and brought in from somewhere else. So I didn't have that desire, and now I've definitely developed that. And living in Spain, we have amazing access to fruit, so I thought, well, India is going to be even better. So I was curious about the food, I was curious about seeing the poverty firsthand and seeing myself within that, and seeing what would happen with just the various either beautiful stories or horror stories I heard, whether any of them would happen for us. And we were clear, literally was clear from the start, we were not going to do it in any kind of comfortable, you know, go to an ashram and stay there in the Himalayas with a bunch of Westerners. We were going to get down and dirty and explore absolutely every corner that we reasonably could, given the 2-month time span. So we went to Varanasi, Agra, Jaipur, Pushkar, Chandigarh, Shimla, Dharamshala, Bangsu, Amritsar, Rishikesh, Haridwar, Delhi, Leh, And then we actually went to Turkey for a while, but that's something else to talk about. We're very keen to see the full picture, as much as I sometimes pretend I'd prefer the tranquil, maybe beach in Goa. No, we wanted to see everything. We wanted to walk the footsteps of the pilgrims, because there's a lot of, we've done many pilgrimages in Europe, including the Camino de Santiago. We've done 3 routes, a lot of that leading to Santiago, and there's a certain feeling, there's an energy with pilgrimage where you end up all coming to the same place. So we wanted to go to pilgrimage sites, and we were also interested in the gods and the different significations of the different gods. And we just recently, before we went, we saw the Mahabharata. We love the idea of God as being Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer, and seeing if they would have any bearing on the city that they're associated with, which is very interesting to me. Being an astrologer, seeing the different associations of archetypes with specific places, I wanted my ideas about astrology to be broken down as well, because of course Indian astrology is very different, and I hate myself feeling attached to one particular style of inner knowing and any idea that there is some kind of way to harness the consciousness. I see it more as different pools that we dip our toes into to trigger us in different ways. So it's a big trigger holiday, just to see what would be awakened and what would come out to the surface. The ultimate word coming out of it would be gratitude. Just so incredibly grateful to be European, to live in the West, to have the freedoms that we do have, and to know that the grass is not always greener, because that was something that was in my mind as a Sagittarius. There's this notion that maybe you need to travel to force yourself to find your place, and it was only through travel, of course. This is what they mean by you find yourself in India. You find where you would prefer and what your true likes and dislikes are. It forces you to develop a will. You can't be passive, you can't be kind of pleasing, and in the middle you have to develop the ability to say no. And I have so much to say on this incredibly valuable experience. I've got a lot of love for the country, and although I wouldn't have believed it, 1 month later I'm now feeling maybe I could possibly go back one day, which I wasn't expecting to feel, especially not this soon after returning. But I guess that's the effect that it has on people. But I have a hell of a lot of bones to pick with certain aspects of Indian culture and Indian men, and I'll be addressing them. The plan is to do many videos sort of just describing the places we've been, and then specific issues within which were sort of general feelings about the entire culture. There were similarities between different, would you say, provinces, and differences as well. And also then going into some pretty hard topics and looking at colonialism and the British Empire within that, and releasing some shame of the forefathers, and just again not identifying so much with things that really were over from the past. And although they may have repercussions now in the present, in all areas and all parts of life, if we're going to get over this victimization thing, then we need to own our own pain, feel it and let it go and move on. And there's a big lesson in that as well, because I see excuses being made and people going around and around in circles, and yeah, just having to make a decision not to take that on as my own burden. It's not going to help anyone just because I'm a member. I was born into a already long dead colony that is then blamed for a lot of the problems in India. So confronting a lot of those feelings and those prejudices, yeah, eye-opening as well. And I'm very excited to take on the task, because it's also then a task of relaying the things I've discovered, because it's too easy sometimes, especially when you come from a wealthier place and you go somewhere that's in the developing world, and you see all the holes in that place, and you don't want to feel like you're bringing them down. But ultimately I think if you're drawing attention to these areas that need to be changed, that's the only way we can help, if we bring awareness to those areas. And otherwise it feels to me like we just we just write other cultures off and say, well, they're just a sexist culture, but you know, I wouldn't expect any different from them. They're not like us. It ends up feeling more racist than if we actually draw attention to the real reality of people living in these countries. And the unavoidable thing to address here is the way that women are treated there, and feeling that, and feeling the, you know, I'm really not a big fan of feminism in this day and age as it's purported and put forward in the West, but after being there for 2 months it became abundantly clear how necessary true feminism is. And feminism, it just has to be the empowerment of women to empower themselves, to really be able to develop a backbone for themselves and have the necessary things in place to really protect themselves, and for us in the West to not take for granted all of the things that the women that came before us achieved, and to really appreciate that it was the Western women who really gave birth to women's liberation, and whatever holes that may have, potholes we may have found along that journey since its inception, the reality of the daily real suppression of women and the fear that women have to carry in some parts of the world is, it makes any minor error or even big errors that have come through the emancipation of women, it makes them seem minor, because that level of stagnation and that level of repression and using women as essentially bins with so little respect for them clearly does nothing for women, and it really doesn't do anything for men either. It's not helping men in their own growth as human beings. It's a stagnation that has to be addressed, and I love people, human beings, too much not to dive into that head first, instead of trying to brush it aside and pretend that it's, you know, they're on their own path. It's like, if we're going to play any role in that, it's going to be really putting pressure on and drawing attention to the clearly inhumane and unloving ways that women are treated that are not acceptable in any culture, anywhere. There shouldn't be female infanticide, there shouldn't be people killing their fetuses when they find out that they are female, there shouldn't be arranged marriages in which young girls are sold off as sex slaves, there shouldn't be trading of women, there shouldn't be child prostitution, and on another level also women should just be free to be out after 8 o'clock at night without fear of being raped. And there's so much to be said and so much to be done, so that's a big reason why this has been a long time coming, is just coming to terms with all of those feelings and all of those personal feelings I've had about myself being a woman there, and then the reality of the rest of the women that have to stay there and live with that and in that, and they don't have a platform, they don't have a voice. And I read it in the comments all the time on different videos. We spent a lot of time in our hotel rooms after a day out in the midst of the chaos, just coming back, and if we've seen something happen, and then investigating whether that's common, and just coming to a wider perspective about India as a whole. And that's the consistent theme, is the mistreatment of women. Yeah, it's big, it's big. I'm certain that it's improved me as a person, it's improved my ability to speak up for myself and to use my voice and to appreciate the freedom of speech that we have here, and I'm going to use that. I will be going into the specifics in the future videos, but thank you for sticking with me and staying subscribed, and I will see you in the next one. I'm really excited to make it.